Hello everyone, today we're going to be doing the UV mapping of the character. Just refreshing you, the UV is a way that we have to select the faces of a 3D model and flatten in a 2D space so we can paint our textures. Then you can paint the textures inside Maya or in a specialized uh, 3D software just for textures like Substance Painter, Body Paint 3D, or you can paint in any normal 2D software like Photoshop. So how can we do this? If you took my Maya 1 class, you know how to do that, but let's review everything. So I'm gonna hide my game character here. I gave the guy game guy is the name of my science fiction guy here. I'm gonna hide it, and I'm gonna work with the body that I did before I created the armor. So just we have a better idea how to use the UV tools in Maya because it's a simpler model. So I'm gonna change my workspace from Maya Classic to UV editing, and then I'm gonna click my model here. So we're seeing some weird stuff here, right? A lot of colors and a bunch of mass here. This is because this was originally a cube. We were extruding the cube until we got the shape of the body that we wanted. But the UV display it wasn't changed. The UV is still the UV of a cube. Like you have the 6 faces of the cube here and the extra faces that we extruded there here. So it's a little bit complicated to understand what is happening here. So if and those colors here, just a way to identify different shells. I'm going to talk about that. Let me turn on this so it does not get confusing. If I press this button here, we're gonna get a checkerboard. This checkerboard is gonna cover the area that you would have of a texture. And then you can understand what is happening here. When you have this face here, whatever is projected in this 2D space is gonna reflect it there. You see, because we don't have a proper UV, some parts you actually see the checkerboard, some parts are stretched, and some parts are just a mess because it's a bunch of polygons on top of polygons, so it's not really usable. So if I come here and I go to a front view, I can create a new UV. Let's turn on this checkerboard here, and here in the create part here, I can use a camera based. He's gonna use this camera to project something here. So boom, I pretty much get what I had here in this orthogonal or orthographic camera I have here. And if I turn on the checker, I was looking a little bit better. Let's go to perspective. Not so bad. You get pretty similar projection of what you have here and what I have here. Either in the back. The problem is on the side because this is pretty much a 2D. I'm not considering like the faces that are here, so I get them stretch out. So this is not ideal either. So what should we do? What we actually do is to select different edges, and we select those edges and we cut them, and then we unfold them. So, and then we have different parts distributed in this space here. There's a lot of ways of doing this. The simplest one here, you can actually just select the faces here and you go in cut and sew, and then you can just press cut and you have a cut here. And then you can go to the shells here and you select one of the shells here, and then you can unfold the shelf. But that's not the best way to do it. So let's undo this. We're actually going to be using this tool here, which is relatively new. It was released in Maya 2018, so 2 years ago. which is called the 3D cut and sew tool. You can access here, or you can access here, 3D cut and sew tool. So how will that work? It works a little bit similar to 3D Coat. Some of you are familiar with 3D Coat. So if I click here, and what happens, I can select different edges here. If I click once, I am gonna select just one, and if I like drag like I'm drawing, I can select two faces here, two edges here. But if I click, the most powerful thing is I click twice, he kind of selects the loop. So he selects more than one. It's like you're using the loop tool. Keep in mind that I'm selecting just one side because I have my symmetry on here. So for example, if I click here like twice, you can click twice, select everything. It's not perfect. Sometimes you're gonna have to click twice more than one to get out the loop you need, but it's very powerful. You can either click twice to get the loop, or you can actually, as I showed before, you just click and drag more than one, and then you kind of draw the selection. So in this case, let's find some cut here. So and one more cut here. That's too much, just one here. And if you wanna erase something, you can just press Shift and Control and drag, and then you're gonna delete the line. Okay, so I have my different shells here. If we change our shading mode here from a wireframe shaded, the nice thing as you create new shells, Maya will tell you if you actually created a new one, because you're gonna get a new color. For example, if I'm cutting here and click here, notice here the sole is still the same color of the rest of the foot, right? But as I close this, now I have a different color. So because Maya is telling me those are different shells now. What is exactly a shell? Shell is one element of the UV that's going to be unfolded and snapped here on the 2D space. So the traditional way to do it, you have to select here and select shelf, and then you go to unfold and you click unfold, and then this is what is going to happen. You're going to have the unfolded UV here. Another way to do this is to make sure you're in the 3D cut and sew tool. Then you go to the shell mode here, and you can select one of the shells. You see a little highlight when you hover one shell. Let's, for example, get the legs here. So because I have symmetry, I selected both. Now if I, instead of going here to fold and then moving, if I just press D in this tool, boom, he unfolds for me and he lays out in the UV space. Very powerful, but this is more powerful if we have all the cuts done and we select all the shells and then we press D. Then everything's gonna be correctly put. So it's gonna be the same effect of cutting, unfolding, and then pressing layout here. So let me undo this and let me make some extra cut here. So we have a complete, we're gonna have a complete UV set here. So here, looking fine. Remember, when you have something like this, like the arm, you have to think about the arm like a cylinder. So you cannot just cut here and here, because imagine you're picking something in paper and then you're gonna unfold this in a 2D space. So you need an extra cut here so you can unfold this cylinder, which in this case is the arm. Similar to the head here, I need to make some extra cuts here. So for example, I can select cutting like here until a little bit too sensitive here, and then I can put something like this, and here I have a good cut here. In the hand, there's a lot of ways to cut the hand, but the way I model, I can just cut here right in the middle. Gonna be enough. So now if I come here, if I go to the shell mode and I select everything, make sure everything's selected, and I just press D, boom. Everything is unfolded and everything is put in the layout of my UV space. Now I have a proper UV and I can paint this anywhere I want. If I press here the checkerboard, I think that looks a little bit more obvious of what we're doing here. And okay, so now we have here, now we have to go to the more complex character, which of course is going to be a little bit more of a complex job to create out the correct cuts. So we're here back with our finished game guy or science fiction, soldier, warrior, whatever. And if I click in the guy here, we can see the UV is a mess, just like the basic body. Because like the basic body, this was originally a cube, and so we still have the UV of a cube here. So let me change from shaded to wireframe so we don't get the colors, and I'm gonna press the checkerboard. Then you can see what a mess this UV is, a lot of distortions, you barely can see the checkerboard, only in this area here. The rest is a mess. So we're gonna have to recreate everything. So let's go back to shaded here, and I'm gonna press space. I'm gonna go to front view, then I'm gonna go to object mode, and I'm gonna go here and create camera based, and then I'm gonna have this basic camera based projection here, just something that I can start working with. So let's press space and go to the perspective view, and here's where we're going to start cutting the UVs here. So we're going to be using the 3D cut and sew tool again, and the process is going to be the same. We're going to make the cuts in the main body parts like we did with the basic body, but the main difference is that we have the armor, so we really have to think about where do we want to cut the armor. I'll mostly be looking at the reference, so I want to make cuts where we change the material, so like everything that's the same, like white, gray metal, I'll try to make the shells more connected, and everything that's like blue is gonna be connected to other blues. And also have to keep in mind you have to do extra cuts so Maya can unfold them in a 2D space. So like I showed about the arm, we have to do an extra cut beneath the arm here. The reason you want to really think about where you cut and not just randomly cutting is because you want to be able to look at the UV set and have kind of an idea of which part represents each part in your 3D model, because the whole point of the UV is so you can bring that to a 2D or a 3D painting tool and you can paint in the 2D space. If we could actually do a automatic UV, we have here the automatic command. he pretty much just detached the pieces and put everything in the 2D space. It works, but you don't really know which polygon is part of each part in your 3D model. So it's usually you're gonna be using automatic for hard surface. I'm gonna be using the sword here because hard surface sometimes it's too much trouble to try to cut a lot of things. It depends of the model. This one we could cut, but if you're working, for example, in a tank or in an engine, that would be too much work. Uh, but for a character, most of the time, even a character with a metal armor is better to manually cut. So that's what we're gonna do. It's a boring process, but you have to do it. And trust me, it used to be much worse. Uh, even in Maya, like 3 years ago, we didn't have this tool, so it was a much more boring process. So be happy that we have those extra tools. So as soon as I make a full cut here, I get a different color here. Maya is telling me this orange one is a shell and the pink one is another shell. If the color, sometimes the colors are very close because Maya ran out of colors, you can always check going here in the shell mode, just you hover over the shell. So Maya shows in red, this is one shell and this is another one. I only have two because I only made one cut. So let's keep making more cuts here. So let's look any part of the model where it would make sense to have new cuts, and we're just gonna keep using the 3D cut and sew tool. As we create new connections, we're gonna get a different color representing the new shells, new UV shell. So that looks good. Now I need to do this bottom part of the armor. Any sharp division in the armor, I should create an extra cut because I know that's gonna be hard to unwrap without the cut. And okay, this knee pad protection here should be separated too. And again, that's a trial and error process. With time, you get the gist of it. You understand the parts you should cut, the parts you should let connected. And later on, we're gonna actually have to check the mesh again to see if we missed any part. But in the beginning, I think we are gonna get most of it right in the first pass, because this is a more of a, even though it's an organic character, it's of a more of a hard surface cloth. It's like an armor, it's like a hard armor. So in this case, you have more clear cut areas where you should create the cuts. Pretty obvious where you should put the cut. It's a little bit less obvious when you're talking about something that is more organic, either an animal or maybe a character with cloth, like not an armor, so really fabric. But in this case, it's pretty kind of obvious where you should make the cuts. Again, just think like you're playing with a paper toy and you are gonna have to unwrap everything. So unless you could unwrap this into a 2D paper, you would need to make an extra cut. So try to think like this. Okay, I have this 3D piece here. Can I unwrap it in 2D? If not, let's create an extra cut. So what I'm doing here, I'm creating some extra cuts in the belt. It was a little bit hard to get that edge. Remember, I need some cut across. Anything that looks like a cylinder, you need a cut in the top, a cut in the bottom, but you need a cut across. Otherwise, it's not gonna wrap correctly. So let's do the collar here, the shoulder armor. You really have to separate the shoulder armor from the chest armor. The shoulder armor, you have two levels, so two cut. So the biceps armor here needs to be separated. Then remember the cut across, you need that cut across. New cut here, and again we need always to do the cut across, otherwise they're not going to be able to unwrap. The hand's a little bit easier to do the cut, just a line dividing the hand in two. So let's focus on the head, on the helmet of the character. Let's create some cuts here and another cut here, a little bit here, and more cuts here. And okay, so what I'm cutting here is like where the visor is, like we're gonna have like different textures there. So let's first separate the front and the back of this helmet, like the side ones and the top part. And okay, now I can separate the visor, and I still need this extra cut here, and I think that's good. Okay, now we have enough cuts, so let's see if we can unfold this and it's gonna look good. So we're here in the shell mode, and we're gonna select everything, and then I'm gonna go to the 3D cut tool and just gonna press D. Boom, it's gonna unfold everything. Then I have to check out, maybe I missed some parts, I should make some cuts. Let's check some parts here. So to see exactly what we're selecting, I'm gonna move from shaded to wireframe. So if I select this, then I know I missed, I can see here the color, so I actually missed a cut here. The thing is, when you have any shell that kind of looks like a spider, you have to double check. Isn't not always the best unfold. It's usually better to make an extra cut, so this is gonna be straight out. So for example, I'm gonna make a cut here. I just wanna go back here and just one cut here, and now if I select everything, again 3D cut tool, press D, gonna recalculate. So now you see it's not that spider web again. Looks better. It's easier for you to paint later on. So I'm gonna go ahead and make some extra cuts of those parts that I forgot to create an extra cut, and then we can go to the next phase. So let's analyze here. So I need a cut across here, because that's like a cylinder. As I told before, we need to find a place that we can create this cut across, and this looks a good place. What else? Okay, so this part, okay, a cut across there. Same thing here. This one is, which one is that? Okay, that's in the tibia area, so another cut across here, and now it's this actually, what is, no, here. Okay, so that's the belly. We need to have the cut across in the back. And now the neck. You see, most of the problems, like the spider web problems I had, were basically cylinders. As I said, you really have to be careful with that. Anything that looks like a cylinder, and even if this case here, it doesn't really look like a cylinder, but you need the cut across, otherwise you will get a spider web, and that's not what you want. So the collar here, I need a cut across and check beneath it. So the part below the collar, you also need a cut across. And this here, it's okay, that's the sole of the boot, so we need a cut across here. And this, where is this? We're looking for, okay, that's like the shoulder. That's actually kind of okay. So the shoulder seems okay. I'm just looking at the UV overall to see if I'm missing something, but I think not. We have what we need. I think that's good enough. This is kind of a challenge to really know where to do the extra cut. So basically the rule would be, if something is more like a cylinder, like the leg, then you need the extra cut, like I did an extra cut here. But if something is supposed to be more oval, like the shoulder here, then you don't need the extra cut. For example, like the lower part of the shoulder here, it looks like spider web, but that's good enough the way it is. So now I just select everything else again, and I press D, and oh, sorry, I have to select and B in the 3D cut tool, and then I press D. Okay, now we have the new cuts. Looks pretty good. You see everything that I made a cut has a more proper fold here. For example, the leg is not that spider web anymore, more like this. So this is what we're gonna be using for Substance Painter or any other software that we want to paint our texture. This was a manually created UV, but as I said in the beginning, we can do automatic one, and we're gonna do this for the sword here. So the sword, just like the body, it has this funky UV because it was originally a cube. So you had the UV of a cube, which is totally useless for us. We could do the same manually cut, but let's try some automatic options we have here. The first one we used as a base of the other one would be, of course, to use the camera base in the front one. You get this here. To be honest, if you would scale this on this axis here, it wouldn't be so bad for a sword, because the sword is a very flat object, but you still would get some stretch here, so that would not be desirable. So the other option would be to use the automatic UV creation tool here in Create Automatic. So let's just click here, and boom, we have an automatic UV set. So as we can see here in Viewport, what Maya does is basically it projects a virtual cube, so all six sides of a cube, and the rays, they come from infinite, and when they hit the blade in this angle, Maya register as a UV shelf, and it separates the polygons if they are in different parts of different plane hitting the object. So it creates a kind of usable UV set. We could actually try to make this a little bit better. Select everything, go here in Arrange Layout, and then just click Layout. So it's gonna distribute the parts a little bit better in the UV space. Why should I do a manual UV if I can use this one? Well, as I said, this it is workable, but usually you don't get a good view of the object because you really destroy the object. You get all those little pieces here. Because of the sword is a very simple object, we can kind of figure out parts, like this is this cross blade, part of the cross blade, the cross guard, I mean. This is the blade. But if you get a more complex object like an engine, this would get confusing really fast. And let's just compare with the guy here. Here is pretty clear what is going on, even though it's confusing if you never worked with 3D animation. But if you, after a while, this is pretty obvious. Okay, this is the leg, this is the chest. And as you can see, everything is a chunk. You don't have a little piece, a little lost polygon like you have here. Here you have like a lost triangle here, a little square here. And that's because it's a simple object. A more complex, you would have tons of these. So this is usable, especially for hard surface, more complex objects. For example, if you're doing airplane, I don't know, World War II airplane, where you have like this more organic fuselage hull, but the engine is very complex and you see a little bit on the outside. You could do like the fuselage, you could manually do the UV, but then the engine you could do automatic, because otherwise would be kind of pointless, too much work. So that's the point. I wanted to show you guys both. It's good to know when to use both. And even though here you have this problem of a lot of little pieces, there are ways when we export, for example, to Substance Painter, so we know we can send in a material ID through color or through like other ways, so we can identify each part in the texture painting program. So that's what we're going to be doing in our next part. One last thing about UVs. UVs can also be used as a selection tool, and a very powerful one actually. And what I mean by that, I mean that, for example, if I'm here using my selection tool, in Maya we have some ways to select elements, right? So in this case, I'm in the face mode. I can select each face individually. I can press shift and select more than one. And if I press twice in any face, it's gonna select all the connected faces in the object. Sometimes the object is made of different meshes that are not connected, so this only select everything that is connected. We can also use the loop selection, so you press shift and then you click twice in something on the side of the face, and then we select everything until Maya thinks the loop stopped. That's what we've been using so far to create this character. But what about if you wanted to select, for example, just this area of the armor, just the white area in the chest? You don't want to select anything more. There isn't any way for you to select using the tools and techniques that I just showed you. But if you have a UV map created and you have this part separated as a different shell, you can actually select this. It works like this. I need to be in my face mode here, and then I can, for example, select just one polygon here where I want to select everything, and then I look here, where is my shell? So this is my shell. So if I press twice here, he's not gonna select all the mesh like would happen if I click twice in the viewport. He's gonna select only the shell here, so I only have this part here. And you can do this for any shell that you created here. For example, if I want to get here in the groin, select here twice, I only have those, only that shell. This is really powerful, can be super useful, not just for texture painting, but for any other task you have to do in Maya. For example, if you want to model something and you have to scale just that part, you can select just the shell here, and that will be much easier than having to just select everything here. So just a little tip, UVs can can be very powerful. in different ways. So now we're going to be creating a material ID for both the character and the sword. What is a material ID? It's basically a snapshot of the UV space with a solid color for each material that we're gonna have in the character. In this case, let's look at the reference here, how many materials we have. We have the gray metal, we have the gold metal, we have the blue metal, and we have the visor. So 4 materials for the character. The sword's gonna be same thing, but we're gonna have an extra material for the blade because I want the blade to be a metal that is slightly different than the gray material that we're gonna be using on the crossguard and the armor. So we need this because when we export this to Substance Painter, we will be able to select the shells and the polygons that we want to paint in 2 ways. We can select the UV shell like we have here, and that would work for the character, so we could do the whole character without the material IDs. But for the sword, where we don't really have a manually done UV, we need the material IDs. But even for the character, where we could use the UVs, the material ID is useful because it's a little bit faster to get the material set up in the character when we export this to Substance Painter. So let's go back to Maya Classic. So let's click here in the little ball here. So we're gonna be opening the Hypershade. And let's clean the node editor. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna create a Maya material, not an Arnold. We're gonna create a normal Maya shader. And it's gonna be a simple Lambert shader. The reason we're going to be using the Maya material for the material ID and not the Arnold one, it's because we're going to be using the 3D Paint tool, and the 3D Paint tool only works with a Maya material. So I'm going to change the name here to material ID. And I'm gonna apply the material ID to my character. So right now it is the same color, nothing changes here. So now I'm going to rendering, and I'm gonna use this tool here, the 3D Paint tool. If you took my Animation 1, Animation 2 class with Maya, you're very aware of this tool. If you took my class with Cinema 4D, I'm gonna give you a little introduction here. So the 3D Paint tool, it's basically what the name says, is a tool where you can paint in 3D space direct in the model. The problem is this is a very old tool. It hasn't been updated in the last 15, maybe almost 20 years. It's pretty much like it was when Maya was released in 1998. Actually, it's a little bit younger. I think it was released to Maya was in 998, but this tool came a little bit later, but it's still pretty old. So the point is, as a texture painting tool, the 3D Paint tool is not very good. That's the reason why we use Substance Painter, 3D Paint, Body Paint, and other 3D Coat and other different software to paint our textures, and not this. But this can be useful for some different reasons. It's a good learning tool. So when I'm teaching 3D Animation 1 with Maya, it's a good learning tool to understand the concepts of 3D painting. But in a production level, it can be very useful when you just want to mark areas of your of your model, and then you're gonna send it to another software. In this case, we're gonna be doing the material ID, which is a form of marking the polygon you want for this specific material. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna use the 3D Paint tool together with the UV editor, because the UV editor will help us to select the shells that we need. So here how it works. We're gonna go here in the file texture, and here you can select the channel of the material you wanna paint. To understand this a little bit better, this is our material here, material ID. It is a simple Maya node that has different channels. It has the color channel, transparency channel, ambient color, incandescent bump mapping, etc. We're going to be using the incandescence channel. This one is the self-illuminated channel. So if I bump this to 100% and I have a white color, I get this solid color. So the lights and the shadows are not affecting the object. So that's what we want for the material ID. We want to use a solid color. So we're gonna put this 100, but then we're gonna create a texture here. We could manually create a texture file here, but that we don't need to do that. We can create here in the 3D Paint tool. So it's white because I put the incandescence channel in the top. I'm gonna attribute to paint. I'm gonna paint in the incandescence channel, but I need to create a texture. So I'm gonna assign or edit texture, because it's assigned, I didn't create anything. Be sure you have 4K as your size AX and size Y. So that's 4096. Keep aspect ratio and click assign edit textures. Maya's gonna read a little bit. And now you notice we don't have that cross in our paint brush anymore. It means we can actually paint right now. So I have my color here. If I paint here, I'm painting in the incandescence channel. Let's understand a little bit more what we're doing here. Let me undo this. So right now, what do we have here in the material? We have the color channel and in the incandescence channel. If you look here where we had a checkerboard, we don't have the checkerboard anymore. We have a connection here, and that's connecting to the texture we're painting with the 3D Paint tool. The thing we need to do, we need to turn off the color channel, because otherwise when look, I have a very bright red, and if I paint here, it gets a kind of washed out paint, but that's because it's mixing with the color, with the white color. If I go down here, boom, I have the white that I wanted. So let's undo this here. Okay, what we're gonna do, let's be sure the color is 0. The point here is to select the faces that we want to represent one of the materials in the reference and put a color that's gonna be used as the ID. We could actually use any color. We don't need to use the same color in the reference, but I'm gonna use the colors in the reference just because it gives us a better idea of the reference. But you could, instead of using like the gray for the armor, you could even use a green or a red, because it doesn't matter. This is not a texture that we're actually gonna use visually. We're gonna use that to tell Substance Painter, like, hey, those polygons here, they have a different material. So the way we do that is like, we're here, object mode, and you go to face mode. Let's click twice and select all the faces. Let's go to the 3D Body Paint tool. Remember, to see this, you have to click twice in the tool here, so you get the tool settings here. And instead of using the color, which is the color we use to paint with the brush, we're going to use the second color, which is the fluid color. So we're going to select a different color here. We're going to select the gray of the armor, and we're going to flood this. But instead of just clicking flood paint, I have to change here. Instead of all, I'm going to select selected faces. For the first color, it won't make a difference because we're going to be painting everything. So we could just leave it all. But for the other ones, we're going to be selecting the specific faces. So let's flood paint this. Wait a little bit. Boom. Now we have that color. You probably noticed the gray is a little bit darker than we got that. This is another reason we cannot use the 3D Paint for texture painting anymore, because it's such an old tool. There's a conflict with the viewport driver, so the colors that you paint, they tend to get a little bit darker. But again, we are not using to paint a texture, we're using just to create a material ID here, so that's fine. So now let's select a second color. Let's select a blue one. But now we have to go to face mode, and we need to select the faces we want. So that's we go back to using the UV as a selecting tool. So you can select here in the model. So I know this part's gonna be blue, and I know, okay, this whole connection here, I click twice, so selected everything. I know the legs are gonna be, this part of the leg is gonna be blue, so I just select one poly. I press shift to keep selecting more stuff, and now I know those two shells here are the leg that I need. I click twice, and then I select that. So and I'm gonna do this for all the parts that I need as blue. Oh, I got a wrong one there. So this one is blue. It's blue. Blue. And keep in mind I have my symmetry on in the modeling toolkit, so I actually just need to select one of the shells if they are symmetrical, which is pretty nice. For example, I don't need to click twice here and twice here. I can just click twice here, and also is going to select here. Oops. So that looks good so far. So let's go back to the 3D Paint tool, and let's just flood paint selected faces. Cool. There's a little correction I need to do in the hand because I I forgot to cut a shell in this part of the hand that should be white. So for this one, I actually have to manually select the faces. Go back to 3D Paint. Again, the gray. Those swatches here are like the last ones you selected, so I know this is the gray that I used before, so I'm just gonna select this. And boom. Now we can select the faces in the visor. It should be almost black. So let's select the gold part of the character. Let's select the gold one here. Paint. And I'm gonna lastly I'm gonna paint the sole of the boot here. So this part's gonna be yellow. And this part here is gonna be blue. So okay, that's good enough. So for the sword, the process is gonna be the same. Hypershade. Let's rename the material ID here. It's gonna be Game Guy Material ID because we're gonna have the sword material ID. So same thing, it's gonna be Maya, and we're gonna use a simple Lambert. And we're gonna call this sword material ID, and we're gonna do the exact same thing with the other one. So we're gonna make the color 0%, incandescence gonna be 100. And the last thing we need to do before we can move to the sword is to actually save the texture, to save the material ID that we created. So we go here to the 3D Paint tool, and here in the file texture, we actually need to save texture. If we don't do this, we're gonna lose this the next time we open Maya, because so far we've been painting on the object, but everything has been saved on the RAM memory, which is the temporary memory, not in a real file. So actually we can see this in action. If you click here in the Hypershade and we check here in the node, we see the incandescence node, and there is a connection here. If you click here, we have a file node, but you're gonna see we don't have anything here because everything is painted on the memory. We still don't have the file. So let's save this, save the texture, and now we should have a texture on on our project file folder. Let's check here. So source image, this should be inside your project, the project where you set in set project. So let's check here, source images, 3D paint textures, and then we're gonna have the file we are creating here, which is this one here, and there we go. We have our texture. So let's do the same for the sword, and we need to apply this to the sword. So object mode and sword material ID, assign material selection. So we got our incandescence material there. So now we can start working. As usual, we have to go here in File Textures and select the channel we want to be painting. In this case, as usual, incandescence, assign edit textures. So 4K, assign textures. And then my brush does not have the cross anymore. It means I'm good to go. So I'm gonna go to face mode, select all the faces, go back to 3D paint, and select this one here, which is same color of the armor. Select the faces, and I'm gonna fluid paint. So I think I didn't get the correct. Oh, it should be this lighter one. Yeah, so actually, yeah, this is the base. Then that was the first one, was the blade actually. So I'm gonna actually select the blade here. Let's go back to 3D paint. Select the darker one for the blade. Could be any of the darker one. Let's choose this one here. And fluid paint. Now let's select the parts that are gonna be blue. So they are actually this one, this one, this one, and this part I'm gonna have to manually select. Here I have to do more manual selection than in the body because the UV was created automatically. So we don't have nice logical UV shells. In some cases, like in the blade, the UV was easy to identify and use as a selection tool, but that's not gonna be the case for the rest of the sword. So that's good for the blue part. Okay, good. Last thing, again, we have to save the texture. So click Save Texture. And now we actually see the texture here. So now we have the material ID of both the sword and the character. We just need to export the models. So I'm gonna shift select both, and for the Substance Painter I'm gonna export both together. Just check on the outline, make sure we are selecting only the meshes that we need, which is, in this case is the Game Guy armor and Game Guy sword. And then let's go to File, Export Selection. Then let's find where we're gonna put this. And I'm gonna give this name Game Guy with sword. Exports to Substance. It's a long name, but it's good so you understand which exported mesh is this, because you're going to be exporting this to Substance Painter. But after you bring back the texture, you're going to have a second export. You're going to have the export to Unity, to the game engine. So it's good to have a name differentiating the different exports. So the current preset we're going to be using is going to be this one, the Autodesk Media Entertainment. So you don't need to change anything. So just export, and we're exporting as FBX. And boom, that's what we need for now. The FBX, basically, let's check here. We need, we have the FBX file here. Inside my project, in source images, 3D Paint textures, I have the two materials IDs that I created. So we are pretty much good to go to Substance Painter, and that's gonna be the topic of our next class. So your homework is to create all the UVs and then the material IDs, and then to export the FBX. You're gonna have to upload to Blackboard both the Maya file with the UVs, the material IDs, which is gonna be like two PNGs or JPEGs, and finally you're gonna have to upload the exported FBX that we're gonna be using next class. So that's all for today, and see you guys next module.